Welcome to episode number 10 of the WWIM podcast. That's WWIM podcast, Women Who Inspire Me. Our guest today is the smart, beautiful, funny, compassionate educator, mother, wife, ancient aliens enthusiast, which we'll definitely get talk to that at some point. Elyssa Margwarth, thank you for being our guest today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Good. How are you?
Great.
Good.
So share with our listeners kind of your life story. What led you to become the person you are today? You grew up, you said not in Westboro?
Not in Westboro.
No?
Born in Maine, lived there a brief time. My parents moved to just over the border to New Hampshire. And then I was there till I was about 7. We moved to Rhode Island. This was all just my dad kind of chasing different career opportunities. Okay. And then we were in Rhode Island for most of my formative years. So I think that was probably until I was 14.
Okay.
So 7 to 14 was a lot of years. And in between those years, I remember we moved down there and it was like we were in one house for a year because they couldn't find anything to buy. So we rented for a year. And then once that lease was up, there was still nothing they wanted or something else happened and we had to find another rental. So we moved again. And one year, I think we were in the same house for a year or two. And at that point, the district rezoned their schools. So this was a town with 5 different elementary schools. And I went to 4 out of the 5 of them.
Whoa.
During the few years we were there.
Whoa.
And then it was middle school. So I had, 3 years at the middle school. And then right before my freshman year of high school, he took another job up in Massachusetts and we ended up in Westboro. So moved around a lot.
Wow.
Changed schools every year pretty much up until middle school and then again in high school. So I was always the new kid. I had a lot of different teachers, a lot of different buildings that had different methods of teaching and discipline.
That probably helped you as becoming a teacher, having those
I
different
had a lot of different, and I met so many different people too. I think by the time I got to high school, I knew which kind of people I wanted to be around,
right.
And which kind of people I was like, I'm all set. We're not going to be.
So in each setting, you could identify, well, that's a jerk. That's a
I learned, and I'd also learned not to really hold back too of who I was. I had to make friends all over again every year. So there's a little bit of I don't want to fly my freak flag right away because then everybody's like, what a weirdo. We're not going to be friends with her. You give them a little time to get to know me, and then I would be silly, but. I wasn't about to change who I was. It was just it was too that would be too much work.
Siblings doing this with you?
Yes, I have a younger brother and a younger sister.
Okay. Oh, you're the oldest.
Mm-hmm.
What's that like being the oldest?
I don't know.
No, yeah.
First to pave the way for everything, I guess. A little.
Do you guys
tricky.
get along still? Got along then?
Yeah. My sister and I shared a room our whole life, so that was hard for a while. I think, but now that we're all adults, we get along.
Yeah, I was the same. I shared a bed. Oh my God, a room. So that's how it is in their family. Oh, I shared a room with my brother Tom until my brother John went away to college. So that was. You definitely, I think, gain perspective or gain appreciation for having your own room when you've done that for 18 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
My parents actually had to build an addition. There were 3 of us. We had 3 bedrooms for 7 people.
Wow.
At one point. So my parents, my sisters had a room, then 3 brothers in one room.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So you're growing up with your siblings, you're moving around, and then you settle in Westboro.
Yes.
So that must have been like a relief,
somewhat. At that point though, I was kind of, I was in that angsty teenage years, and I didn't want to move. I had really close, tight friends down in Rhode Island, and didn't want to leave them. So by the time I got to Westboro, I was like, I'm not even going to bother making any friends. I don't want to know anybody anymore because we just leave, and then I can't get attached. But it happens because you have to have friends. At first Westboro was definitely a culture shock from where I had come from, and. I remember thinking there's nobody here. I'm not going to know anybody. Their lifestyle is different. They just don't have the same appreciation for the things that I value. And, but I found my people. Yeah. It was good. And then, but I was only there for 4 years too. And then I went away to college. And so it was all very short lived.
Notable Westboro High teachers or Westboro High experiences that shaped you?
I had an English teacher. I think it was my junior year. I feel bad. I can't remember her name now, but she was really wonderful. She definitely it brought out the writer in me. And
okay. Yeah. What do you write?
I not really any. I don't know. For a while I wanted to write, but it was just, what am I going to write about? I have no idea.
Like a writer as a student, you mean, or? Like brought you out? What?
Yeah, I think she just I think she put. I guess she was just open-minded, and it was like whatever I wrote. It wasn't about what I was writing. Right. She just wanted to make sure that I improved the writing. I don't know. I just felt like I had a good relationship with her.
Yeah, it's funny. English was probably my least favorite subject in high school. But then my senior year, my English teacher made it my favorite subject.
Yeah.
Like, and that's so telling of how great a teacher he was. Right?
Yeah.
He was entertaining. He was funny.
Right.
He knew we didn't want to learn about it, so he made it as fun as he possibly could.
Yeah.
So when you graduated from Westboro High, and did you go to college thinking I'm studying education?
I did. I knew I wanted to be a teacher early, as I was probably 6 or 7 when I first started school. And I remember like setting up my dolls at shoe boxes and having little desks and teaching them. And so I always wanted to teach. That was always what I wanted to do. And I went to Westfield State for a year for education. I didn't have a great experience there.
No.
And my now husband was in Afghanistan at the time. Yeah, he was in Afghanistan at the time. So it was hard to make that. Like I was in that mindset of like, this person that I love could die at any time, and here I am, like there's people inviting me to parties. I wasn't into that. Like
you guys must have been really young when you got married. Were you even 20 yet when you guys got married?
19. Actually, I think I was a month before I turned 19.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
That's like my uncle. My uncle was 18 when he got married, and his parents had to sign something so he could drink at the reception.
What's funny is nobody asked us for that. And they just at our so we got married in a courthouse, and then like a year and a half later we had like our family big wedding, and I still wasn't of age, but we are hosting a wedding, and like part of the package was just like champagne toast. I'm like, okay, nobody's gonna bother asking us about this. It's kind of funny.
Did you? So was it not long after you got married? He was shipped off. Like what?
Well, he was deployed in Iraq my senior year of high school.
Wow.
So he graduated the year before me, and he went overseas, and that was like the first like initial invasion of Iraq and all that. So yeah, that spring was a tough last semester of school, because just you're constantly thinking like he might not come home, and at that point it's obviously like young love, you're just obsessed with being with that person, and
some people never outgrow that.
It definitely changes over time, but it was I think if it were me now, it would have very different perspective on things, but then he came home for the summer. I went to college. Then he was deployed again. I want to say it was October, sometime during the winter, maybe October through January. And then he was in Afghanistan for like 6 or 7 months of my freshman year of high school, college.
All right. And are you communicating email? Are you FaceTime?
There was nothing.
Brand new back then.
There wasn't even a thing. Yeah. And when he did that tour in Iraq, there wasn't even mail. There wasn't even
just because of the secrecy of it.
Nothing. Well, there was no way to get it in and out of the area. Oh. So I think maybe he sent me one letter, and it was like 2 months after he mailed it, I received it. So it was a lot of just the unknown. And then the second tour he did was more email, but he was, I think at one point, then the third tour he went on was on a ship, and in order to use an email or a phone, you had to wait in line for like a week,
That is insane.
And so he's like, I'm not waiting. I'm like, it's fine. I wouldn't expect you to wait that long. It's crazy, So we just didn't really, it wasn't a lot of communication back and forth.
And now he's home all the time. That's good. He's done.
Yes.
So he's not going back.
Yeah. He did 5 tours altogether. So
I was going to ask you 5.
It was a lot.
That's like 8 too many.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know. And we were so young at the time.
Thank you, Josh, for your service, by the way, all the time. Like I'll thank him randomly, like on a day, and he's like, "Oh no, don't worry about it." Like I was like, "But I need to. I need to thank you on a day where no one else does." Like, so at any point did you have kids and he was away?
Yeah, that was during the last one. Okay. Let me think. So we were living in North Carolina when he was in the Marine Corps, and I left Westfield State to move down there, get married, and I went to community college down there, which was, by the way, if we're talking teaching, I had this one professor there who was phenomenal. And I didn't care at all about what he was teaching, but he made me care about it because he was just so passionate about what he was talking about, and he loved rocks. Like that was his thing. I think it was like a biology class.
Oh, so it wasn't even education.
And he was like, it was one of some required science class, and I'm like, oh, whatever. We're gonna learn about plants and cells and things. And he would come in, he'd be like, sometimes I just pick up rocks and I want to identify them. And I'm like, Okay, tell me more about the walks you love. Like it was just like it was engaging.
Passionate about something,
right? You have to listen.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So anyway, then I did a year there, I think, at community college, and it was great. It took up time, and it passed some classes, and that was it. And then we moved home.
What was your first? You said you were an aide. Your first teaching job?
Yeah, it was still a ways off. Like we had a long in between. It took me. We moved home.
Yeah.
We had our oldest, and then he deployed when he was about 6 months old, and he was gone for a full year that time.
Whoa!
But I have to say though, it was a lot easier with kids than without, because you are busy all the time, and there's no
else to worry about.
Yeah, and there's no time to think about how much time has passed.
Wait, being a mom takes up time.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. But then eventually I went back to school when we had our second one. I'm like, I have to finish this degree. I'm not a quitter. So
good for you, because a lot of people just be like, well, I'm a mom now, right?
Well, I'm also really stubborn, and everyone was like, if you drop out of school, you're never going back. I'm like, watch me do it.
I love it when people say that. You can't do that. You can never do that. Yeah. Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I will someday. And it was hard. I was working at a nursing home with dementia patients for 6 years. Oh my. Going to school and we raised the 3 kids.
Those jobs, that has to have a huge burnout, and
it was exhausting. Right? It was. I loved it. I lost my grandparents before I was really a full adult, and so I didn't really appreciate them how I could have had I known them in adulthood, and so I had all these adoptive grandparents. I loved them; they were great, but to watch the decline was hard.
Oh my God, that's I mean. Just that, I'll see you when you see that, you just appreciate wow, my mental capacity is I'm fine. So if you're having a bad day, well, at least you're thinking you're thinking straight, and you're able to walk around by yourself and and dress yourself
right. And they were very vocal about that too. They'd be like, appreciate what you have. I'm like, I know I do. I promise. And they were wonderful. I bonded with them as friends too, and it was hard to watch them decline. It was harder to watch the families suffer through that,
right?
But it gave me that drive of this is why I'm in school. I want the opposite end of this. I don't want to see this end of life. I want that beginning part. So,
and then what was your first job in education?
Yeah, I got a job as a paraprofessional. At first, it was a 1-to-1 with a student who I still am in touch with the mom and watched him. He's in high school now. It's pretty
in Massachusetts,
cool.
or is it still that? Okay.
Yeah, still in town, and it's really neat to see how far they come. But
kindergarten para or what?
This was first grade, my first year.
Okay.
Yep, and then I think I went to kindergarten the following year. So I was a para there. I can't remember. I was trying to remember this morning if it was 5 years, 6 years there.
By the way, shout out to paras who are underpaid.
Yeah, seriously.
Overworked.
Absolutely. They're a godsend. They can't do that job. The teachers can't do that job without them. No, they can't.
I've told paras in Westboro, I'm like, well, if we really want more money, let's just have a para skip day, and then be like, good luck.
Mm-hmm. It's true. It's true. And the aide that I have now, she's unbelievable.
Yeah.
She just is. I can't do that. Yeah. I couldn't do it without her. I couldn't.
So what's your current classroom setup? How many kids do you have? You have one para in the room?
I have one para.
With how many kids?
16.
And how many of those are on IEPs?
1, 2. I want to say I have 2 or 3 right now, but
there are also on.
It's kindergarten, so there's a lot of
people have,
stuff happening.
Yeah. So you need a good para.
Yes.
Yeah. The fails is any intensive need kids has a 1-to-1. So the para, there's pretty much a para and teacher in the room all the time. Mm-hmm. And there's a floating para that just does copying and prep and
that's good. That's helpful. Right? That's helpful.
Right? Because when I was at the preschool, paras do both. You do both.
Yeah.
You're in with that intense kid, but then you also go set up the center. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We have the one that works in the classroom next to mine. She's just super fast with prep stuff, and she takes things home, and we're like, you really can't take things home.
Doing that?
She loves it, and she wants to help, but we're like, you have to stop. You're not paid enough to do this. You need to stop taking things home. Yeah. But she's amazing. She's an artist, so she makes beautiful everything that we give her turns out gorgeous. Yeah. So we're thankful to have her too. She's amazing.
And you've been at your current job it's relatively new.
Yeah, this is my 4th year.
Okay. And enjoying the district. And
love it.
Yeah,
I love it. It's wonderful.
That's awesome. It's amazing how, would you say it's mostly because of your coworkers, just the environment of the school, or it's kind of like all those things?
It's a lot of those things. I mean, where I was before was the coworkers I had were just fantastic people, and I learned so much from them, and I'm still friends with a lot of them. So my coworkers there too. Yeah, admin is tough.
Yeah. I've had some experiences. Yeah. Did I tell you about my experience with the Northborough, Southborough?
I don't think so.
So I, you know how they give you steps, right?
Yep.
So I was a para in a school in Northborough. I won't name it. It rhymes with Algonquin. And and they're like, you're on this step. And I was like, no, I have this many years experience.
Right.
Like, so they're like, the principal of the school was like, oh, it's not my call. And HR was like, no, you'd have to go to the superintendent to change that. So I did. I went to the superintendent. And I was like, look, here's my resume. Like, why am I on this step? Well, and this is what she said. She said, any experience you have that's more than 10 years old doesn't count. I was like, those experiences don't expire. They're still in my head. Right. Like, I'm still bringing that experience to the job, and that's why I'm really good at what I do. And she wasn't having any. Or just tell me it's not in the budget then. Just say, sorry.
Right. And that's the whole thing. It's just be straight up with me. So I don't, so all the time. That's too bad.
She's no longer there, so.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
What are you currently teaching your kids about? Are we talking about cooperation? Are we talking about our feelings? Do you do
we do
second steps,
care time every afternoon. Okay. So we start right at day 1, and last week was perseverance, and next week sometimes we have, like, if there's a fun day coming up. So next week we've got Groundhog's Day. We've got the 100th day coming up the week after that. So we're starting a lot of our Groundhog and 100th day stuff during that time. But it's still we still read stories about the topics that we've read or discussed. And then after that, I think we do kindness and.
Do you have? I know my experience and other teachers I've worked with in pre-K and kindergarten. Do you have books that you love to teach and books you're like, I wish we didn't have to teach this? What are your favorites and what are the ones you...
there's so many good ones. It's hard to pick favorites. There's some amazing ones. The last couple ones we did, so like the curriculum that we are using, they determined doesn't have enough like rich text. And so we're kind of supplementing that with things that we feel are much better, and which is great that we're allowed to have that little bit of freedom. Not entirely, we can't get rid of everything, but if we can keep the same lesson and just switch out the text, it's wonderful. So one of the ones, I think the one that the curriculum wants us to use is about planting a garden, and we're like, it's January, we're not going to talk about planting a garden right now. We live in Massachusetts. So we switched to Sneezy the Snowman, which is great.
We just read that yesterday.
Yeah, so they can do they do this cute melted snowman craft. We talk about hot and cold things and the difference, and then it leads us into our science curriculum on, states of matter. So we're like, well, in the classroom, outside he's frozen, but we bring him inside, he melts, he's liquid, and brings us to that. So that kind of all intertwines. And then they write about it. We do a cool melted snowman craft with glue and shaving cream. If you've never done it, it's a lot of fun. And this week we did snowmen at night. So they get to imagine where the snowman would go.
That's a good one too.
Yeah. So we try to keep
I like the books that, because they're like, whoa, could that happen? Like, wow, what if this happened?
Yeah.
Just make them think like that.
Yeah, it's good. So we swap out some more seasonal appropriate text. But
and are you do you have freedom? Like, are you with your schedule and what you do, or is it pretty this is literacy time, this is math time, this is how does that work?
Yeah, at the beginning of the year, we can kind of design it how we want. But once we have found a routine that works, we tend to stick with it. For ease of the day and the routine. So we have the same routine every day.
Okay.
Unless there's a snow day or a half day or early release because of
Did you have early release this week, or did you have no school early release?
We had no school Monday and then early release Wednesday.
Wow. We just had early release Monday and then nothing Wednesday.
Oh, nice.
But it was worse out where your school
There
was
nothing happened either day.
They just...
They tried. They do their best.
It never happened when we were kids. They would never predict...
No.
They would never say...
You waited.
Right.
You waited till that morning and you're watching the scroll bar on the TV waiting for... And Westboro was always at the end and then it would go to commercial. You're like, no.
Snow days are the best.
Yeah. They're great, but I hate making them up in June. I'd rather like have
them. Exactly. I think right now our last day is a Friday, so I don't want any.
Yeah, that stinks.
You don't want to come in on a Monday.
And then last
Juneteenth.
Year,
right. Last year that happened to us. We had, so it was actually like
Tuesday.
2 days almost. Like,
yep.
Right?
Yep. One half day.
We have not had one. That was our first anything snow related on Monday.
Yeah.
We
same.
haven't had a delay or snow day yet.
I think we had one delay. And then the early release
Watch
Wednesday.
March just be like hell.
It's gonna be a nightmare.
March. Can we all agree March is the worst educator
worse.
month of the year?
There's nothing that happens in March.
It's St. Patrick's Day, but you can't drink with the kids.
You can't really do much.
Teach the kids about whiskey.
Yeah, and like I'm not one of those teachers that likes to have my classroom destroyed by the leprechaun. Like I'm not into
Is
that.
that a thing?
Yeah.
Oh.
They'll come back and they're like, "Oh no, the classroom was destroyed by a leprechaun." I'm like, you have to clean. Who wants? I'm not cleaning that up. They make enough mess as it is. I'm not.
Do you do Valentine's Day?
We do something. We don't do like parties,
Exchange.
but
No
the kids can bring stuff in. They bring stuff in, but
Okay.
we let them they have
Do
a little
whatever.
envelope thing. They put them all in, and that's
Okay.
kind of it. It's tough this year. I have a Jehovah's Witness, so we're kind of. I don't want to leave her out,
Right.
and to be respectful of the family's wishes. It's like, and it's hard because everything is themed at this age.
Right.
You print something offline, and it's got hearts or leprechauns on it, and you're like, I have to use whiteout and just take it off before I make copies. So it's
for
a
her.
little,
You mean she gets her own Jehovah's Witness anti-holiday version of the lesson?
Sometimes it's just hers, but if I'm gonna if it's something they're gonna use together, then I feel like I should take it off of everyone's.
So what's their argument about holidays? They're pagan. Is that why?
No, they believe that Jesus Christ is the only person, like the only being that is worthy of being celebrated, and so to celebrate anything else is basically like it's sinful. And
Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus doesn't like Valentine's or St. Patrick's Day.
I know.
Oh. That, I mean, you believe what you believe, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
right. It just
makes it harder on you.
It makes it harder as a teacher because in the older grades, I feel like if you're giving them a math paper, it's not going to have hearts along the edge. Right. But in kindergarten, everything is themed because you want to make it.
It'll relate their mind to like what's going on and.
Yeah, that, and then when they finish, they can okay, now you can color the hearts.
Yes, exactly.
Work on your fine motor skills.
Exactly.
So it's a little tricky in this age, but
yeah, it is. And you probably get the question like, why doesn't she celebrate? Like, do you get those questions?
We do,
that?
And but we do a lot around Christmas time anyway. That talks about how every holiday is special to somebody, and we do a lot of work around respect and diversity and at that time of year, so they kind of get that. And even at the beginning of the year when we're talking about who's in our families and what makes us special, they're very, at that age they're so open to
they don't care.
They're just welcoming to everybody, like okay, that's what you do and this is what I do and that's fine. That's why that's 5-year-olds are my favorite people.
As we're walking up from inside a recess, walking up the stairs, 2 of the boys were arguing about who could marry who. No, a boy can marry a boy and a girl can marry a girl. And some of those conversations, talk to mom and dad about that.
I just try to give them a very basic. They're like, Mrs. Margwarth, can a girl marry a girl? I'm like, they can as long as both girls want to marry each other. Then that's fine. Like, then you have to be an adult.
You're right. That's the important. Well, though that's the end of that conversation. This kid goes, well, I think boys should marry. I'm not lying. He goes, I think boys should marry girls, and I'm going to marry my mom.
Good for you.
Right. They do say the darndest things.
They're wonderful.
Like, I'm sure. What are some of your favorite? Like, you have.
Gosh, I try to write them down because I forget them so easy. So they're all in my Facebook. On this day thing. The other day, I have one. He's just hysterical. He just comes out with the funniest things, and his bus was called, but they do a first call and then a second call. So at the first call, he lines up at the door, and he's the only one on that bus. So it's just him, and he's one of the last buses. Just him standing by the door with me. And then I open the door, and the bus is there. We're waiting for the bus driver to be ready to let him on, and they do the second call, and he goes, "Oh, snap!" And he just books it to the door. I'm like, he wasn't gonna leave without you. We were already standing here. It was just funny.
Especially the intense kids I work with, or one intense kid I work with, so preoccupied about missing out. The FOMO some of these kids is unbelievable. Like, what are they doing?
Oh, yeah. Or like another teacher comes from another part of the building, like, hey, can you come work with me for a minute? I'm like, oh, can I come too? No, you can't.
You don't want to go there. Yeah. That's extra work.
Right. Yeah. They're funny.
It's that's why, to me, why, not that education is my dream job, but why I can do it is because every day is different. Even if you have the same schedule, every day is different. You're going to hear something different.
Yep.
The other day, or yesterday, we had crazy hair day, and I had my rainbow mohawk wig, and this girl. And I love how they'll just blatantly just be like, no, this is what it is. And she goes, Mr. McGrath, I know that's a wig because you're bald. And I was like, thank you. Yeah, you're right. Thanks. Like, thanks for the reminder.
They say such funny things. I wish I could just recall all of them at on demand. But I had one student one year when I was a para, and I think she will go down as like my favorite student ever. I know you're not supposed to have favorites,
right,
but I can't.
You do.
I mean, and she had her own little special. I mean, every kid has special needs because every kid is unique and needs special things. But she was another. She had a little bit of different learning styles and things without getting too into it. But she was so funny, and she said the funniest things all the time. And she was an only child, so she spoke a lot with adults, and she had this very adult way of communicating. But so she would say things like, I've got a very important lesson for you today. And I'm like, what is it? And she's like, don't ever stick a fork in an outlet. And I'm like, did you do that? And she, nope. Daddy kicked me out of the way just in time. I'm like, oh my God. She ordered, we had a conference with her mom one time. She told us this funny story. She accidentally ordered a plane on Amazon on her mom's phone. Like, those teeter-totter seesaw planes? Yeah. So the mom was at work one day, and they're like, we have a delivery for you. Can we bring it around back? She's like, you can't bring it through the door? And they're like, no, it's pretty big. She's like, what in the world is coming in for me? So it comes in, and she's looking at the box. She's like, oh, my God.
That's amazing.
And she had given her daughter the phone in the back seat to play with, and she went on Amazon and ordered this and went through. If you think about how many steps, like add to cart, select, buy now. I'm like, she couldn't read at the time, so how did she do it?
Though. Like, yeah.
It just goes crazy. She had ordered movie tickets one time, and then she came in and told me about it. She's like, Mom was mad at me today. And I'm like, what happened? She's like, I ordered movie tickets for a random time on Tuesday. I'm like, you just come out of this little kid. This is the funniest thing.
When my nephew was like 3, I want to say, he figured out how you could DVR. He knew that sports was green, so he'd just go through anything with sports. My brother's like, I woke up and there was 4 hours of a rodeo on our DVR.
Nice.
Brendan thought it was a sports thing he wanted to watch.
You should have made him watch it. This was what you recorded.
Right, exactly.
You're going to like it.
Speaking of things we like to watch.
Yeah.
Ancient Aliens.
It's so fun.
What got you into it? Like, did you?
I don't know. I think we found it one time and we're like, what on earth is this nonsense?
Right?
And it was really that, like we said, passionate people are interesting to listen to. So listening to them talk, you're like, you couldn't help but pay attention and be like, what do they say?
Right.
And
it was
the
same thing. Like, I watched a couple episodes, and then like you don't want to like rush. Ancient Aliens is not one of those shows you're like rushing to people. Oh my God, this show is amazing! No. You got to watch it. You kind of whisper. Like, I was like, my friend Carl was like, hey, have you ever heard of Ancient Aliens? He's like, yeah, I love it. I was like, okay, great.
But the fun part is when you find other people who have, like, you're instantly like, you're right, I know. It's crazy. So,
which is cool when you, like, I went to the, like, conference or whatever it's called. And, like, everyone, you're all talking, like, everyone has that vibe. Like, wow, is this true? Who knows?
Right.
But I want to say the first episode I watched, I think, was about the pyramids. And I was like, what?
Yeah, it's so cool. It was the one, I remember the one about the, like, power plant where they were like, the pyramid is a microwave or something. Right. I'm like, what? What are they talking about? And they're showing, like, water going through these tunnels and beams into outer space. I'm like, this is ridiculous. But the more you watch it, and what I love about it is not necessarily that I'm buying into every little detail that they're saying, but it's like the questions. I like that it asks that question that makes you think, like, well, then what is it?
Right.
How did it get there? What is it for? Why did they do that?
Things built at the same time, lined up with the stars and with a means we don't know how they did. Like, why and how?
How?
And it's like,
and we can't explain it.
It was something. Something phenomenal went on during the biblical times. Something.
Right. Well, they wrote about it.
Right. Exactly.
A bunch of people wrote it down.
Different. I was telling this to Mark. Different places on the Earth were all writing similar things about something similar that happened.
Even if they were separated by oceans and they had no way of...
Something happened. What the hell was it? Was it God? Was it aliens? Was it just nature being a nature god? Like, I mean, you could argue anything, really.
And I think when people hear ancient aliens, they think about like little green men. Yeah. And you're like, but what if it's some other? What if they're humans? Yeah. What if they're just humans
from another time, another dimension?
Yeah, or just another planet that's so far away we haven't figured out how to connect.
I just watched Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I have not seen it yet.
It's a multiverse. movie.
We've seen I know the concept, but
and the director, I think, graduated Westport High. Might have been the same year as you.
I think.
Were you 2006?
No, it was 2003.
Okay, so. He was there at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, I saw that on the news thing.
But that's another, theory of aliens could just be from another universe or dimension and just pop in and out. Who knows, right? I mean, there's something happened back then and something is going on now.
Yeah. And speaking of aliens, so we're going to talk alien movies. Like way back, was it 97 in Men in Black, right?
Yes.
One of the best quotes that applies to so many different aspects of everybody's life. At one point, Tommy Lee Jones' character says to Will Smith's character, he says, something like, 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat.
Right.
A week ago, you knew we were alone in the universe. What are we going to know tomorrow? And it's like that whole concept of like, you don't know what you don't know.
Right. I think a lot of people, I think Mark's one, won't believe until there's like a mass landing and beings come out and say, hi, we're here and this is where we're from, and this in public with people, everyone's seeing, I think.
But what if they're gone? What if they were they already had their humankind?
It was a one-off.
And something happened to them, like they destroyed their Earth and now they're gone. Right. And now it's us. Like, I
like the idea that you said about it's other they could be other humans in another, who knows what part they came from or what thing or time they came from, trying to come back and study us or do whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you watched the one? I don't know if there's Ancient Aliens episodes that are just about like close encounters of. Did you watch the one? The story about what happened in England in 1980. Have you that story about it was a military base, and so all these military officials were like, "Yep, there was a triangular shaped thing, and it wasn't making any sound, and it made like they had physical evidence of what the thing did." Mm-hmm. And people are like, well, no, it was the light. It was the lighthouse light off the water. Like just coming up with any explanation as to why that couldn't have. But it's like, why would you guys make that up? Yeah. Like that's what I told Mark last night. I'm like, so either UFOs are real or everyone's a liar. Like what?
I mean, a lot of people are liars.
Well, of course.
I think that's not everyone. But I think there has to be a lot of nature things that we don't understand fully that could be responsible for at least a percentage of some of those unexplained things. Right. So it's tricky to kind of place it all on, it has to be aliens. Yeah. I don't know what it is. Who knows? What if there's some type of gas in the atmosphere we haven't discovered yet and this is what's causing that? Like
we were talking about antimatter yesterday. Like there's more of a thing that we don't know what it is than actual stuff.
Right.
So, what are we? What is the universe anyway?
Right.
Like,
even in our own planet, so much of the ocean's unexplored. Right. Like, we wouldn't even know what's down there. We could find a whole other world down there. We wouldn't even know it's there.
Well, that was like, speaking of underground, the ancient apocalypse thing. Was it Turkey that they're all those underground?
Somewhere in that area.
Turkey. Like, someone got the idea that there was going to be a really bad apocalyptic event from someone in the sky. Told him this is going to happen, like Noah, but it wasn't Noah. And he said, you better go underground and build a thing big enough to live off of. Yep. And that's all over Turkey. There's, I don't know how many of them. There's at least 15, I would say, at 10 to 20 maybe, of these underground cities all around the same place because a sky person told them.
Right.
And then the big flood or whatever happened.
Right. Yeah. And then they didn't, the current people didn't believe they thought it was just a story.
Right.
And so then all of a sudden they were like, hey, here's one. How do you know? Where's the rest of them? So it's funny that how much you don't know. It's cool to think about.
We watched last week one of our favorite episodes. Mm-hmm. Mark, you'll love this one. It was called Space Station Moon, about how the moon is hollow.
Could be hollow.
Could be hollow.
Could be.
Sounds ridiculous. Can't wait to watch it.
So my husband thought it was ridiculous too, but then halfway through he had his hands on his head. I don't know. I don't know no explanation to this.
So this is the thing about the moon. So you mind if we talk about this?
I don't
we
care.
love this. Okay.
Yeah, it's great.
So
let me guess, it's filled with cheese.
I wish it were filled with cheese.
So the popular belief about how the moon was formed was the Earth was forming, and then this big mass of rock or whatever bashed into what the Earth was forming, and then just started spinning around and became our moon. Great. Let's say that's true.
That's just the general
consensus.
Accepted science currently.
What are the I asked you this last night. What are the odds when that happened, the moon came out to be the exact shape and distance to make eclipses perfect, right? Because if the moon was too bigger or smaller or closer or further away from us, eclipses wouldn't happen the way they do. But maybe, I brought up that point to some people, and they're like, well, maybe that's just the math. The math worked itself out to me. But to me, that sounds like crazy. That's crazy. And the moon also is an anomaly. Like every other moon in the universe we know, every other moon rotates, doesn't only show one part of its face to the planet, its host planet or whatever, its mother planet or whatever. Our moon, you only see one side.
It's like it's constantly
it's
glued to the same
and this
side.
Keeps you up at night.
It doesn't keep you up at night, but
it
why?
It makes you wonder why.
Out of all the moons we know, our moon is the only one that does that. Why? You don't think that's odd?
You're blowing my mind, Dave.
Our moon is different, and it influences us. Like other moons don't influence their planet. Mm-hmm. But like you said, who knows what it is, but it makes you think. It makes you think about what...
Obviously, there's aliens involved somewhere.
Well, okay. Then in the episode,
they were against eclipses that were not perfect. In the episode,
they also show how when things are crashed into the moon vibrates like a bell. It goes ding, where a rock solid planet wouldn't really. It wouldn't.
So they did a similar test on Earth,
right?
And when you do, and it has something to do with the atmospheric pressure. Right. I mean, space is a vacuum, so we're talking. It's very different on the moon. But if you do this on Earth, you'll use the seismologist stuff. I don't know all the technical terms for that. So basically, with earthquakes, you would have, you'd see the vibration against the Earth for, I think they said a minute or two, right? And then it would die off. Right. Depending on how large the object is, it doesn't matter if it's huge or small. The impact is going to vibrate that section of ground for about 2 minutes. Right. Only when they did it on the moon, it was an hour the first time, and then 3 hours the subsequent time.
So the moon, when they crashed a small, not huge object into the moon for 3 hours, it
had like a moonquake, is what they called it.
Obviously, it's aliens that want to be discovered. That's the paper trail.
So the other thing in the episode is they show the astronauts coming back from after they went on the moon for the first time, which is life-changing, worldly changing, crazy. Let's celebrate. We did this thing. It seemed so impossible. And Kennedy's like, we're going to the moon. Then they did it, and they come back to talk about it, and this is their faces. They're all in shock or just I don't know what. How would you describe
despondent?
Yeah, just
they just were.
Yeah,
they knew they wanted to say more, but they couldn't or something.
It's called jet lag, Dave. Look into it.
Maybe.
Rockets.
Jet lag is no evidence of an alien civilization.
How long is the jet lag when you're returning from the moon?
Right. Moon's on the same. Yeah, I don't know. The moon does the moon have time zones?
Oh my God. I think it's weird how there's no water there.
Well, then they have a space mission recently. They came back with algae or plankton or something stuck to the outside of the
that they think crashed into it somehow, right? Or
no? I don't know. I don't.
Well,
that's an episode though.
That's the other ancient alien one that we were some civilization shot a seed, right? Or a thing that with the beginning of life and landed on the Earth. I mean, who knows, right? That could have happened.
Right. Could have been.
Marx believes if they were out there, they'd already be. We would know by now. We would there would have been some sort of public landing, and
I believe more in the radio.
Oh yeah,
waves.
But did I send you or you send me a thing about they just heard a radio wave?
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I saw that one.
They just heard some radio wave from somewhere really far away.
The problem is, the distance, you're going to lose time because of the distance. So this could have, if we're just hearing this now, this could have been
millions of years ago.
Right. At least thousands.
Well, that was in the movie Contact. Did you ever see that?
Yep. And then it was again
the signal we got was bounced back from the first signal that ever.
Right.
So in the beginning, did you ever see Contact?
Yep.
Yeah. It was like all the Hitler stuff, and they're like, "Oh no! Like, are the aliens like Nazis?"
Right.
And like it was like, no, that was just the first
old
television thing that went out. They sent it back to let us know they got it.
Mm-hmm. And then, Interstellar was basically Contact 2.0.
Yeah,
it was the same idea. Yeah. And in that one, he goes out there, but when he comes back, it's been like 30 years, but he was up there for like an hour basically. But so. And you think about it that way, it could have been.
Well, they've kind of proved that time travel is possible, right? If you went out into outside of the Earth and traveled towards the speed of light and got to the speed of light, if you did that for 2 years, when you came back, it would be 10 years. Or I don't know what the math is, but so you can technically they've proven that if you could do that, you could time travel.
There was a really good book about that I read in high school, actually, called Einstein's Dreams. And each chapter was a different theory that Einstein had about how time worked. And one of them I just remember because it was this, and he builds these, in the book, the author builds these hypothetical scenarios. So, and he tells them like a story. So in this one chapter, the whole world, everybody builds their houses on stilts. And the higher up the stilt is, the slower time passes, so that if you like the wealthy people who want to remain young, they get the highest houses. And, the people who then invent, a ship that can launch them as high up as the atmosphere can take them, they live up there. And then that way time moves slower. So they're therefore supposed to be younger, and they only come down when they absolutely have to because they age every time they come down to Earth. It's kind of a neat idea. Nice. It was a good book. Short. It's easy read. So you get to it.
It seems more expensive than plastic surgery.
Time travel? Well, that's what I was saying.
I don't think Einstein was predicting we had plastic surgery.
Why aren't there commercial flights to the moon?
Right. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah. There should be. Right. There should be
some
company that, the money in that would be insane.
Who was supposed to build that space elevator? Wasn't that going to be a thing?
My uncle was talking about that like 10 years ago. That's like died or something, right?
Well, but why? Yeah. That's the thing. You would think people saying, who did.
Who was telling me the rocket industry is basically designed to fail, right? Or they're designed. Who was telling? It wasn't you. Was it you telling me about Boeing?
They suck.
Yeah. But how basically NASA and Boeing they just want everyone to keep their jobs. So they think if they do too many, what was it?
It's not that they're trying not to advance. It's just that they're trying to keep jobs
to sustain
to the point that they make decisions that don't help them accomplish stuff in space.
What space exploration should be. They're kind of and there's arguments about that for any company. Like you can argue the American Cancer Society really doesn't want cancer to be cured because oh shit, what do we do now?
Money, right. Next.
And their anti-cancer messaging hasn't changed in 30 years. It's been wear sunscreen, don't smoke. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's what you've come up with in the 30 years. Those are your best things. Come on. So it's along those things. Right. But there should be.
But private companies. You think about Elon Musk and who's that guy from Virgin Mobile or whatever, that Richard Branson. Yeah, and you think about that. They wanted to do privately funded missions to space, but why? Right. But what was the purpose? Did somebody pay him off to say no, you can't do that?
They want to meet aliens first before everybody else.
Or are they keeping people away from the moon for a reason?
That's the first deal.
Right, exactly. How many missions at SpaceX? They do X number of missions a year. What is it? It's way more than NASA.
They launch in about once a week.
And they're a private company, and NASA's job is to do that, and they're not doing. They barely
they stopped. Do it. Yeah.
NASA is funding SpaceX.
Oh, so they through grants or something, or oh, okay. So they're here, we'll pay you to do better what we
stopped doing.
Yeah. Well, did you probably don't remember the Challenger? You were very.
I know.
You were one. Or were you
was that 85? That was the year I was born.
86.
86.
So you weren't even one yet. Yeah. Did you watch that in school?
No, but I remember waking up the next morning.
Because it happened while we were actually at school. Were you in Australia?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
I woke up in the morning in Australia. The cartoons weren't playing it. Like I always watch cartoons in the morning. Like,
so it pissed you off.
And I was
Space
like,
Challenger
I was
explosion
like, what
pissed
the
you
hell?
off.
There's no cartoons. And
Some damn teacher died. Who cares?
Yeah.
Right.
So it was kinda
no
weird.
offense, Krista McCall.
They were sad over there, I guess.
Yeah.
At least
Yeah.
the adults were.
Well, then I remember that. Well, so I didn't watch it in school. People were watching it. I was in Armstrong in Westboro. I believe Mr. Daypray's class. You ever have? No, you were in here yet. I believe his class was watching it, and someone came out and said the space shuttle blew up. And then, so I had that information, and I was passing that along to my friends. The space shuttle blew up. Guess what? They thought I was. My friends thought I was joking. They're like, "That's funny, Dave." Haha. Of course it didn't, but it actually did. With a teacher, first teacher ever who was supposed to.
Yep.
And then, do you remember all the bad jokes that followed?
No, but I do remember a heck of a lot of promotion about this first teacher in space. Like it was wall to wall for like weeks.
Even in Australia, you heard about it.
Yeah,
because I mean, she was from New Hampshire and went to Framingham State. Like there's like an award and everything at Framingham State named after her. So especially here, it was a big deal.
I mean, beyond like a normal shuttle launch, which it's probably become boring. Yeah. They're like, oh, you got to see. This is the first teacher. This is like a civilian, like not a NASA person.
Right.
And
but like we said last night, do you know this? They knew it was going to blow up.
No.
Yeah. So NASA, correct me. This is my.
Well, they knew there was a danger.
They knew there was a danger. There were people that interviewed that said, I knew it was going to blow up. People that were. So, like, NASA, there's two companies NASA dealt with for rocket parts. Was Boeing one of them? Do you remember?
I don't know.
So there are two companies that NASA dealt with for rocket parts. And before they could launch the rocket, they had to get the okay from these companies to do it. They hadn't done a mission for a while, so they're under pressure to actually get it done. There was a huge deal with Krista McCall being on. And it was cold that morning in Florida. I don't know, not freezing, but colder than normal. And so they called the company, and they're like, all right, we're ready to go. And the company's like, nope, it's too cold. You can't do the mission today. And we're like, look, we already got it. It was like once or twice. It was delayed already. And NASA's like, look, you friggin' tell us we can do this mission today, or we're going to go to that company for our rocket parts from now on. So the company caved and said, okay, you can do it today.
Oh.
And then it blew up.
Was there a movie made about that?
A documentary. There's a documentary about that story.
Why hasn't anybody made a movie out of that yet?
Oh, like an actual movie?
Yeah,
it was a reenactment of that.
Oh, right. It has. Okay, so you have watched
of basically this conference call, going on, and the guy's making all these arguments, like just because the engineers are saying it's darker here when it's colder, like more burning going on, and the guy's like, do you have any evidence that something that's blacker means it burn more? And they just were like, what? Like it was insane.
Well, it's just like I just watched the movie The Good Nurse, and then there's a documentary that goes along with it too. And the hospitals, they just don't want to. They look at it financially.
I read the book last year.
They just look at financially. Financially better
they
for
didn't
us
care.
to just move.
They pushed him off.
Same as the churches with the abusive priests. Well, it's better just for us to get rid of that and be quiet about that than protect who we're supposed to be protecting.
Right.
Like,
but it involves
which is the
so
aliens,
many.
right?
Yeah.
As long as the aliens make out, we serve out them like gods. They'll leave us alone.
Well, but that's the ancient alien thing.
That's one of the theories.
That's what would happen if aliens back then. If aliens landed, they would have been like, these are gods. They're not us.
Right.
They're coming from the sky. That's where God is. And angels, God lives in that ship, and then the angels come down. Like, if that's
and a lot of it is interesting when they talk about, if you read the text that it's written, it's like a chariot, and it's
fire.
got flames,
Ezekiel,
and you're like,
the wheel within a wheel.
Right, and you're like, but that sounds like a spaceship to me. I don't know. And then you're like, they came down in this thing that was shiny and gold, and you're like, okay, it's metal. Like it's not always what they consider to be angels. Maybe it was just another being.
We had a Hope Lodge guest who was very religious, and would always talk about angels, and he's praying to his angels, and his angels would save him. And I was like, well, buddy, angels are extraterrestrials. I didn't say alien. I said angels are extraterrestrials. Do you know that? He's like, no, they're, because in his mind he's thinking green.
Yeah, little green men.
He's like, no, they're not. I was like, yes, they are. I was like, if you believe in angels, they're beings from somewhere else that come to Earth.
Right.
That's what an extraterrestrial is.
Yes. Right.
Whether you think it's from another planet or heaven.
Right. It's
Heaven's
still
another thing, if a plane of existence. If they're coming from another place, they weren't from here to here, that's what they are.
Right.
He did not want to
But
hear it.
that's if you get into the actual definitions of a lot of things,
Right.
that's how it is.
Right.
You don't once you define it,
Right.
then people are like, all right, you're not
Well,
as
like
crazy as I thought you might have been.
Universe, it's one. It's
Right.
We're all in it. It's just one thing. Like we're all.
Well, same
part
with the word UFO. Like everyone always thought aliens.
Right. It
Right.
just is
But it could mean a
unidentified.
thing we don't know.
It just means
Yeah.
unidentified.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But people, when you say that, then it's, well, you're talking them crazy because there's no such thing, even though
Right.
Pentagon said it.
Right. Well, because it's unidentified.
Well,
that's all it
that's
is.
the
It's
funny
something
thing.
I don't know what it is. I see
figures
it up there.
Like the summer of 2020, when pandemic was hitting everyone hard, is when the Pentagon would be like, "Oh, by the way, UFOs are real." Like, because no one,
Yes. Shh, don't tell anybody.
no one cared.
Right. And murder hornets.
I remember, like,
You gotta wait till Independence Day 4 comes out.
Well,
and then,
well, that's part of. Did you watch that Ancient Aliens too, where they're talking about where basically movies are programming us to get ready for it?
Oh yeah. I've seen that one.
Which you could argue that's, who knows?
you've
right?
been watching too much X-Files lately.
I don't. I'm actually not an X-Files fan. I saw the movie, the first. I think they've done another one.
You would like it.
Yeah.
It's dated though now.
Yeah. I watched.
There's one guy in there who's has his finger on the button and everything. I
Yeah,
forget
the guy with the
Yeah.
cigarette, right?
Yeah.
Smoking
Yeah.
man.
Yes.
And
I
he's
know
in
that,
the
and I don't
conference
watch
room
it.
there, and they just casually say, "So who do you want to win the Super Bowl?" And then they, all right,
Punches
this
in.
team of just
Yeah.
and writing down all this stuff.
That's cool. Yeah, it's fun to think about, like, if there are aliens, are they influencing us, or were they our creators?
Right.
Like, who knows? Or are we? That's the other thing. Are we in just a program? Did something just start a program, and that's what we're in? I've had this talk with you.
I feel
before.
weird that I'm in a room with two educators right now.
who are believing this stuff.
It's not. So the point is, I think that's
That
important
makes
to
you
note, though,
think.
is that when
There's
you're an
no right or
educator,
wrong.
you have
Yeah,
to
right.
you have to have this mindset
Right.
of like,
Right.
I'm always going to be learning, and I always
expect
want my students to
teachers
learn.
to have knowledge.
Do you ever have the kid that tells you they know everything already?
Oh, of course.
I always in the back my back pocket. I'll be like, so what's episode 5 of Star Wars called? I don't know. So you don't know.
You don't know.
and then I did once. I was like, all right, what's Batman's real name? I don't. Oh, it's Bruce Wayne. So you didn't know. Like,
It's just important to like. I think if they know there's so much they don't know.
Right.
For them to hear from adults too.
That-
We don't
yeah,
know
right,
everything either, and it's okay. But you keep learning
and
all
keep
the
asking.
time.
I mean, that's the great thing. They'll
Keep
always
asking
ask,
questions.
right? Do they ever ask you about? My kindergarten students have asked me about ghosts and aliens.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, yep, I think both of them are real.
Yeah,
and they're
of
like,
course.
what?
Yeah. Ghost is a whole separate thing.
And they're
It's like,
and they're
don't get me started on
Mr.
ghosts.
Rath, Mr. Rath, I want to hear your ghost story. Like, are you sure?
I have a lot of ghost stories. It's good.
Oh, share one.
Oh, let's see. Well, it started, I was at my friend's house in Westboro.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't think I'd ever put any thought into it before. And then I had met her, a couple months prior. But this was the first time I'd spent the night at her house.
Yeah.
And her room was in the basement, like a walkout basement. And it's the middle of the night. And I'm like, I wake up out of nowhere. And of course, it could have just been, I'm in a strange place, whatever. Yeah. And I'm looking at the bottom of the stairs. There's like this shadow man standing there, and I could tell, like I could see, like he had a hat on. Right. He was this big guy, but her mom was divorced.
Right.
There was no old like adult male living in the home, and to me, like knowing it was a walkout basement, I start freaking out that there's like an intruder. There's somebody in this house, and I'm like crouched down, sleeping on the floor next to her bed, and so I'm like, maybe if I just lay really still, he won't see me here, and I start freaking out, and I like closed my eyes and pulled the covers up and started like breathing really slowly, and I went to peek out again, and he was gone, and I was assuming that he like walked somewhere, and so I'm like trying to like gently wake her up to be like, oh my God, we have to get out of the house, like there's somebody in your house, and she wouldn't wake up, and it was like all night I was awake the rest of the night, and then the next morning her mom's like, how'd you sleep? And I'm like, honestly, I really thought there was somebody came in the middle of the night. And she's like, oh yeah, it was a big tall guy with a hat on. I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, that's the dude. We have him in our house. He's the ghost. I'm like,
thanks for
you could have told me. You could have told me you had a ghost in your house. They're like, well, you wouldn't have believed us anyway. I'm like,
how old
I don't know. I was like 15 maybe.
Well, because you think you're going crazy. At least 16. I did when I had mine. I'm like, yeah. When I saw an orb flying through the room, I was like, okay, so either I'm just crazy right now or that's what just happened.
Yeah.
But then, like, when you get confirmation from other people, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
So I'm not.
Well, and that happened. Josh and I were in one of the houses we lived in, and we were sitting on the couch one night watching TV, and there was like a half bath with the laundry area right off the kitchen, and we're sitting there watching TV, and all of a sudden, we both turned and did one of these, and then we realized the other person that each other had also seen whatever that was, and we're looking at each other like, what was that? And it looked like a child, and so we were like, all our kids are upstairs, they were all asleep. We're like, it couldn't have been ours, and how would they have gotten down without us? Right. It had been a couple hours, and so we're sitting there, and it was like a head and shoulders kind of like peek out from the door and back again, and what was weird was that we both did. We both looked and saw it, so it was. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what it is?
Well, like speaking of like kids we work with, especially intense kids, I always had this. All our senses are on some sort of bandwidth, and every things you can sense are also there are different bandwidths, and everyone has, whether it's talking about a ghost or a color or a noise or the feeling of your hair getting cut. Everyone has different
sensory
experiences and intakes things differently. Right. I think ghosts are the same way. I think
it has to be. There has to be something. I mean, you think about
people are more sensitive than others.
You think about energy.
They built those pyramids, Dave.
That's, ghost. Maybe it was the ghost.
Still trying to figure it out. What do ghosts need with pyramids?
The ghosts built the moon. That's who built the moon.
All right. On that thought, our hour's about up. I think that ghost building the moon is a great Ancient Aliens episode. Elyssa, thank you so much for being our guest.
Thanks.
I hope you had a good time.
I did. It was fun. Thanks.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.